She friend-zoned me, then went crazy when I got a girlfriend. You don't get to replace me, she yelled while vandalizing my bike, so I made her pay for it. Hey Reddit. So this girl rejected me, kept me on a leash for 3 years, then tried to burn my whole life down the second I found someone better. Grab your popcorn and enjoy the shit show. I'm Milo, 25 male. I work in aviation safety certification at one of the aerospace contractors in Huntsville. I review flight software compliance documentation, making sure everything meets federal standards before it goes into actual aircraft systems. One missed checkbox can delay a certification by 6 months. It pays well, and the job security is solid because nobody wants planes falling out of the sky. One thing about this industry you need to understand for the rest of this story: your professional reputation is currency. Everything runs on trust. One HR flag, one whisper of misconduct, and doors start closing before you even know they were open. Colleagues stop putting you on projects. Managers quietly distance themselves. It doesn't matter if the accusation is true. The association is enough. Remember that. It matters later. I met Naomi during my first week at the company, back when I was 22 and fresh out of college with an aerospace engineering degree and zero practical experience. She worked in facilities management, same building, different floor. Small talk at the lobby coffee station turned into real conversation. Numbers exchanged. Lunches twice a week within a month. Before anyone starts with the simp waiting around narrative, that's not what this was. Not at first. We built what looked like a genuine two-way friendship. When my transmission blew on my Civic and left me stranded at Research Park on a Monday morning, she drove over on her lunch break and handed me her car keys for the week. Didn't hesitate. When her apartment flooded from a pipe burst upstairs, I spent an entire Saturday helping her move furniture to storage, and she crashed on my couch for 3 nights until the damage got fixed. When her car got towed from a confusing no parking zone downtown, I drove her to the impound lot at 7 a.m. on a workday. It was mutual. Real favors, real effort, both directions. But Naomi was one part of my life, not the whole schedule. I was doing the motorcycle rider course on weekends, hitting the gym 4 days a week, and had my own social circle through Scott and a few other guys from work. I wasn't sitting around waiting for her to text me. I had stuff going on. About 8 months in, I asked her out. Direct, no games. We were walking through Big Spring Park after grabbing lunch from a food truck, and I just said it. Told her I liked her as more than a friend and wanted to take her on an actual date. She did this thing where she smiled, but her eyes went sort of sad. Like I'd put her in an uncomfortable position by being honest. Said she valued our friendship, was in a weird place with dating, had an ex she wasn't fully over who'd moved to Atlanta. Timing was complicated. She didn't want to mess up what we had by rushing into something she wasn't ready for. I took it at face value. Fair enough. Backed off romantically and committed to treating her like a friend, because that's what she'd asked for. If she changed her mind, she'd say so. If not, cool. My career was picking up. I'd just bought a motorcycle I'd been saving for. Life was fine. Here's where I'll be honest about what I noticed but didn't act on yet. The door never fully closed. And that wasn't accidental. She'd call at 11 p.m. on a random Tuesday, because some guy she was seeing had flaked on plans, drive to my apartment, fall asleep on my shoulder during a movie, then hug me for 30 seconds at the door and text, "I love that I can always count on you," with a heart emoji. She invited me to a coworker's wedding as her +1 because she didn't want to go alone and deal with the questions. Introduced me to everyone as her person. When the coworker's aunt asked if we were together, she laughed and said, "Not yet, but who knows what the future holds," while squeezing my arm. Then rested her head on my shoulder during the slow songs. I registered all of it. Every time she touched my arm a beat too long, every text that landed somewhere between friendly and flirty. I just didn't have the right word for what it was at 23. I filed it under "she's genuinely unsure" instead of what it actually was. Maintenance. She wanted me interested, but not pushing. By year 2, I'd moved on mentally. Dated a few women. Nothing that stuck longer than a couple months. Naomi always had opinions about them. The first one was kind of shallow, like she's just into you because you have your act together. The second one gave off weird vibes. I don't think she really gets you. She framed it as being protective. Best friend stuff. But I noticed the pattern. Every woman I showed interest in had a flaw only Naomi could see. There was also this thing where she'd suddenly need me at convenient times. I mentioned I had a dinner date on a Friday, and that same Friday afternoon, Naomi texted saying she was having a crisis with a work project, and could I meet her for coffee to help her think it through. Right at 5:30, exactly when I'd need to leave. I went on the date anyway, but the timing wasn't a coincidence. It happened more than once. At the time, I thought she had high standards on my behalf. Now I know she was running interference. One night after a girl I'd been seeing for 6 weeks broke things off over text, Naomi came over with ice cream from that place on Clinton Avenue, and we talked for hours. At some point, she took my hands and said something I still remember clearly. You're going to make someone so incredibly happy someday. And I hope whoever she is knows how lucky she is to have found you. Long pause, holding eye contact. I just want you to always be in my life no matter what happens. Promise me. Something about the way she said it felt off, like she was asking me to sign a contract without reading the fine print. I'm not going anywhere, I said, but I can't promise forever on anything. Life changes. People change. I'll be around as long as it makes sense for both of us. Her expression flickered. Not the answer she wanted. She recovered fast, said, "That's fair," in a way that made it clear she didn't think it was fair at all. Looking back, that was me keeping a door open without even realizing I'd need it. My roommate Scott is the one who finally called out what I'd been feeling but couldn't put my finger on. Scott works in cybersecurity for one of the defense contractors on the other side of Redstone. We'd been splitting a 2-bedroom apartment near Research Park since I moved to Huntsville. It was a random Tuesday, about 3 years into the friendship with Naomi. She'd texted asking if I could help move a couch to her new apartment that weekend, by myself. Up 2 flights of stairs, because the guy she was currently dating had thrown out his back and couldn't help. Her boyfriend couldn't help, so her first call was me, to spend my Saturday moving furniture for a woman who was dating someone else. I texted back, "Can't do Saturday. You should check TaskRabbit or ask the apartment complex if they have move-in assistance. Some places have deals with local movers." She responded with a single K and didn't text me for 3 days. When I told Scott about it, he nodded like I'd finally passed some test. Good, because I was about to say something. When's the last time she did anything for you that wasn't convenient for her? Like actually went out of her way? I started to answer. Stopped. Couldn't come up with a single example from the past 12 months. You've become a resource she manages, he said. Not a friend she reciprocates with. Big difference. He pulled up something on his phone to prove the point. Last month alone, she texted you 11 times. 9 of them were asking for something or venting about a guy. The other 2 were responses to stuff you sent first. You texted her 6 times. 5 were replies. He'd actually counted. All the stuff I'd been noticing but not connecting suddenly made sense. How she'd cancel plans with me if something better came along, but get upset if I wasn't available when she needed me. How she'd go cold whenever I mentioned interest in someone, but expected me to be her sounding board about every guy she dated. How I was always the one driving to her side of town, always rearranging my schedule. I didn't confront her. I just quietly started creating distance. Took longer to respond to texts. Said no to requests. Kept conversations shorter. Stopped volunteering for things. Then I met Ruby. Ruby worked at a different contractor doing structural analysis for propulsion systems. Smart as anything. We met at a cross-company safety conference at the Von Braun Center. She spilled coffee on my laptop bag during a networking break, apologized profusely, and insisted on buying me a replacement. I told her it was a 4-year-old bag from Target that probably cost $15. It was genuinely fine. She laughed. Okay, but now I owe you a coffee at minimum. Call it professional reparations. That coffee happened 2 days later. She showed up 5 minutes early. We talked for 2 hours without checking our phones. When we left, she said, "I had a really good time. Let's do this again." Then texted when she got home. Made it back. Thanks for today. Turned into dinner the following week, which turned into more dinners, which turned into something real within about 6 weeks. Ruby was the kind of person who'd tell you your shirt was inside out rather than let you walk around looking stupid all day. She worked on cars with her dad every Sunday, an old Camaro they'd been restoring for 3 years. Had strong opinions about barbecue, specifically that Texas style was overrated and Alabama white sauce was underappreciated. She laughed at her own jokes before the punchline. The first time she met Scott, she beat him at Mario Kart 3 races in a row and didn't let him hear the end of it for a month. He respected her immediately. There was also something about Ruby that I didn't fully appreciate until later. Her engineering brain didn't shut off outside of work. She looked at problems the same way she looked at propulsion data. Figure out what's actually wrong, figure out what to do about it, then do it. Some people might call that cold. I'd call it the reason we survived what came next. I was happy. Actually, genuinely happy. And I made the mistake of thinking Naomi would be happy for me. When I mentioned Ruby over lunch at a deli near the Space and Rocket Center, Naomi got quiet, pushed a tomato around her salad. Just be careful. You know you fall fast and I don't want to see you get hurt again. Weird thing to say. I'd been hurt exactly once in the time she'd known me. A mutual breakup after 2 months that I'd processed within a week. Over the next month, Naomi started reaching out more. Random texts at odd hours. Invitations to things she knew I'd be busy for. She wanted to meet Ruby. Said it was important she approved of whoever I was dating. The way she phrased it, like she had veto power over my relationships. Should have been a red flag the size of a highway billboard, but I was still telling myself she was just being a protective friend. Ruby agreed to coffee, the three of us. Polite on the surface, but Naomi asked too many questions about Ruby's background and career. Where she went to school, how long she'd been in Huntsville, whether she was planning to stay long-term. It felt less like getting to know you and more like an interview where Ruby hadn't applied for the position. Afterward, Ruby was quiet for a few blocks. Then, she watches you like you're hers, like a possession that got misplaced and she's figuring out how to get it back. I don't think she likes that you're not available anymore. I said she was probably just being protective, longtime friend stuff. Ruby said maybe in a way that made it clear she didn't believe it for a second. The escalation started about 2 weeks after that coffee and followed a pattern so clean you could chart it. First came guilt, Naomi asking to hang out one-on-one, and specifically on Saturday evening, a time she knew I was usually with Ruby because I'd mentioned it in passing weeks earlier. Getting annoyed when I said I had plans. You never used to be this unavailable. It's like you don't have time for your actual friends anymore. I pointed out I used to be single with more free time. She read the message, didn't respond for 2 days. Then, I miss when we actually prioritized each other. Before everything changed, I typed out something honest. Something about how I hadn't changed. I'd just stopped being available around the clock for someone who only noticed when I wasn't there. Deleted it. Petty texts don't fix anything. They just give people ammunition. Then one night she called at 10:30 p.m. I saw the name, set the phone down, and went back to what I was doing. First time I'd ever just not picked up. Texted her the next morning. Saw I missed your call, everything good? She replied, must be nice to sleep so well while your friends are going through stuff. I didn't respond to that one either. Next came manufactured emergencies. An 11 p.m. crisis that turned out to be a fight with her mom about career choices. I listened for 20 minutes, offered some perspective, then said I needed sleep because I had an early meeting. She sounded annoyed when she hung up. Then a dead car battery at a shopping center on the south side, 25 minutes from my apartment, on a Saturday night when I was at Ruby's place, 40 minutes in the other direction. I told her to call her roadside assistance since she had it through her insurance. She said she didn't want to wait for them. I told her she could Uber home and deal with the car tomorrow in daylight. Standard advice. Wow, okay. Maximum passive aggression. These weren't real problems. They were availability tests, and I was failing them on purpose now. Then she started showing up in person. Saturday afternoon, Ruby and I watching a movie and eating pizza at my apartment. Someone knocked. I opened the door to find Naomi with takeout from my favorite Thai place. The green curry I always ordered. Surprise! I was in the area and thought you might want lunch. She looked past me and saw Ruby on the couch. Her face went hard for half a second before she smiled. Oh, hi, didn't realize you had company. I took the food. Said we were in the middle of something. She lingered at the door for an uncomfortable moment, waiting for an invitation that wasn't coming. Then said she'd text me later and left. Ruby, one eyebrow raised. Does she not know boundaries exist, or does she just not care? Definitely the second one. The last test was a voicemail. Her voice shaky, almost tearful. Hey, I know things have been weird lately, but I really need you right now. It's important. Please call me back as soon as you can. I called 20 minutes later, worried something was actually wrong. She answered sounding completely normal. No trace of the distress from the voicemail. When I asked what was wrong, she said she'd figured it out, but appreciated me checking in. Then tried to pivot into a long conversation about her dating life and how none of the guys she was meeting measured up. I cut it short. She sighed dramatically. Fine. I guess we'll talk whenever you have time for me. That night, I laid the whole pattern out for Scott. He didn't look up from his laptop. She's testing how much she can still extract from you. The question is what happens when the answer is nothing. People like this don't handle that well. I blocked Naomi on everything. Changed my routine so I wasn't using the same coffee station or parking deck. Avoided her floor completely. But the day before I pulled the trigger on the block, something happened. I ran into her in the main lobby. I was with 2 coworkers heading to a meeting. She saw me from across the hall and made a point of walking over. Big smile, touching my arm in front of them. Hey, stranger, we should catch up soon. I feel like I never see you anymore. Loud enough that both my coworkers heard. I gave her a flat, yeah, maybe, and kept walking. But I saw what she was doing, building a public version of our relationship that didn't match reality, planting witnesses who'd remember her being friendly, not hostile. That's when I blocked her on everything. 2 weeks of silence after the block. I thought maybe she'd move on. She didn't move on. This is where it stopped being annoying and got actually dangerous. She went after my career. Marissa, a coworker who'd been with the company for about 10 years, pulled me aside in the break room. She'd helped me navigate the unwritten rules when I was new. I trusted her judgment. She asked if I knew someone named Naomi in facilities. Then her face did something complicated, this mix of concern and caution. Someone's been talking. I heard a rumor going around that you've been harassing a woman in the building, following her around, showing up at her desk uninvited, making comments. My stomach dropped. That's completely fabricated. I haven't talked to her at work in weeks. I've been actively avoiding her floor. Marissa believed me, but she didn't sugarcoat it. Even a fake HR rumor can stick long enough to mess with assignments, trust, and optics. In this field, investigation is a stain even when you're innocent. I started documenting that same day. Backed up every text with Naomi, reconstructed a 6-month timeline of interactions, and emailed myself a time-stamped summary so the record couldn't be disputed later. Asked Ruby, Scott, and Marissa to each write down what they'd seen or heard with dates. Marissa had hers to me by that afternoon. I also pulled my badge entry logs from the building security portal. Naomi's floor wasn't on there once in the past 3 weeks. Clean record. While all that was happening, the friend group was already turning on me. Within 2 weeks, mutual friends from work events started acting cold, avoiding eye contact in the cafeteria, not responding to group chat messages. I sent a message to the group about pickup basketball on Thursday and got 0 replies. A guy I'd grabbed lunch with plenty of times walked past me in the hallway, looked at his phone, and kept going. A guy named Anthony I played pickup basketball with near Monte Sano actually told me what was going on. Pulled me aside after a game and said he'd heard I'd treated Naomi pretty badly. When I pressed for specifics, he got vague. Just said she'd been talking and seemed really hurt. What things? We were never together. We never dated. I told Anthony exactly that. Flat. No emotion. We were never together. I asked her out once 3 years ago. She said no. I moved on. That's the entire history. If she's telling people something different, she's lying. He didn't say anything for a second. Then he nodded, like he was replaying what Naomi told him against what I'd just said, and the math wasn't adding up. Ruby took the news like someone who'd dealt with this before. She had her own version of it in college, a guy who couldn't handle being turned down and tried to poison every mutual friendship afterward. She didn't waste time being upset about it. Went straight into fix-it mode. Stop engaging completely. No responses, no conversations at work, no explanation. Nothing she can twist into something else. Then she sat down at her laptop. Within an hour, she'd changed every password, enabled 2-factor on everything, locked her social media down, and created a shared cloud folder for screenshots and documentation. She named the folder Naomi's Greatest Hits. Then she looked at me and said, "Everything goes in here with dates. If this goes legal, we're not going to be scrambling to remember what happened when. We'll have it organized already. First upload, Marissa's warning with the exact date and time, plus the badge entry logs showing I hadn't been on Naomi's floor. Then the burner account started targeting Ruby. Instagram messages from brand new profiles, no pictures, generic usernames, vague warnings about my character. Some mentioned details a random person wouldn't know. My apartment complex, the motorcycle, specifics that proved it was someone who actually knew me. Ruby showed me the first one immediately. We blocked the account together. More followed over the next week across different platforms, same pattern. She wasn't scared, just annoyed. This is pathetic, genuinely deeply pathetic behavior. My motorcycle, a 2019 Kawasaki Ninja 400, bought used from a guy in Madison. Rode it to work when the weather cooperated, kept it in my assigned spot in the apartment lot. First incident, slashed front tire. Clean cut in the sidewall, not a puncture from road debris. Reported it to apartment management. They checked their cameras but said the angle didn't cover my assigned spot. Replaced the tire out of pocket. $160 plus the time to get it done. Second incident 9 days later. Deep, methodical keying. Down the entire left side of the tank and fairing. Somebody took their time with it. I got an estimate from the body shop. Over $800 to repaint and refinish. That one hurt. Scott and I installed a Ring doorbell plus an extra camera covering the parking lot that same week. If the complex wasn't going to cover the angle, we'd cover it ourselves. The setup wasn't perfect, partially blocked by a pillar, but it caught my bike's spot from one direction. Third incident came 6 days after the cameras went up. Someone approached my motorcycle at 2:15 a.m. and poured something on the seat. The camera caught a figure in a dark hoodie, face partially obscured, but the body type and movement were familiar. The figure looked up at one point, maybe checking for witnesses, and the camera caught roughly half a face in the parking lot lights. It was Naomi. Of course. Scott enhanced the footage with software he used for work. We couldn't prove it courtroom certain, but the height matched, the build matched, the walk matched. She was wearing a distinctive olive green jacket with a specific shoulder patch I'd seen on her dozens of times. Next morning, a folded note tucked under my mirror. 3 words in handwriting I recognized. Miss me yet? I photographed it with my phone before touching it, made sure the timestamp and location data were visible in the image properties. Then I bagged the original in a Ziploc and put it in a folder I kept in my nightstand. From that point on, I only shared copies. The original stayed untouched, added everything to the file, filed a police report that day, brought the footage, the note, documentation of all previous incidents, screenshots of the burner messages to Ruby. The officer said vandalism with this kind of escalating pattern usually pointed to a bigger situation and asked if I knew who might be behind it. I told him about Naomi, the history, the fallout, the messages, the escalation. He wrote everything down and gave me a case number, said to call back immediately if anything else happened. Ruby came with me to the station and sat through the whole thing. On the drive home, she was quiet for a minute. Then, "You need a lawyer, now. This isn't going to burn itself out." She was right. Marissa connected me with an attorney named Caleb through her sister's law firm downtown. I met with him that Saturday and laid out everything. He told me I had solid grounds for a protective order, but he warned me, getting the order is step one. People like this usually violate it at least once because they don't believe consequences apply to them. Document everything going forward, he said. Keep those cameras rolling. When she violates the order, and she probably will, we use it to push for criminal charges. I asked about the workplace situation and the rumors. He said specific defamatory statements that damage my professional reputation could be grounds for a defamation claim. But protective order first, one thing at a time. He sent a cease and desist letter the following Monday. The cease and desist made her worse. If anything, it was confirmation to her that she still had an effect on me. 3 days after she would have received it, a text from a number I didn't recognize. "You really think a piece of paper is going to make me go away? After everything I did for you? After how much I supported you? You'll regret this." Screenshotted. Forwarded to Caleb. Filed. Caleb called me back within the hour. Clear instructions. Stop all direct contact. Don't respond to any unknown numbers. Route everything through him from this point forward, and log every unfamiliar number that texts or calls with the date and content, even if I don't pick up. He said the threat text actually helped us. It showed she knew about the legal boundary and didn't care. That same week, a woman who said she worked in corporate reached out through LinkedIn asking about my professional availability for a new opportunity. Something felt off about the phrasing. I didn't respond, but looked up the name. No such person existed at the company she claimed. The LinkedIn profile was brand new with 0 connections. Then my manager called me into his office with the door closed. Someone had filed an anonymous tip to the company ethics hotline, claiming I had a conflict of interest involving a personal relationship with a vendor representative. Complete fabrication. I didn't interact with vendors. I barely talked to anyone outside my immediate compliance team. But an anonymous tip required an investigation. Company policy, no exceptions. HR sat me down in a conference room and asked a series of questions about my work relationships and potential conflicts. I had everything ready. The cease and desist, the police report, the full timeline. Laid it out without getting emotional. I showed them everything. The HR rep's expression shifted as she reviewed my documentation. "This is helpful context. We'll need to complete the investigation either way, but this is very helpful. 2 weeks to clear me. 2 weeks of side eyes from people who didn't know what was going on, but new HR had pulled me into a closed-door meeting. During those 2 weeks, I changed how I moved through the building, kept all conversations in open areas, avoided being alone in hallways or stairwells, especially near the facility's floor, started saving every meeting invite and attendance log, so I had a verifiable record of where I was during work hours. It felt extreme. It also felt necessary. Even a cleared investigation leaves a mark in this industry. People remember you were investigated. They forget you were cleared. Your name quietly gets dropped from projects. That was the part that made me angriest through all of this. The career threat, because everything else could be repaired or replaced. A professional reputation in aerospace, once it cracks, sometimes doesn't come back. Then came the parking deck confrontation. Thursday evening, half-empty deck with people around. I heard my name from behind. Naomi standing by the elevator bank, arms crossed, blocking the most direct path to my car. She looked like she'd been waiting. "We need to talk." Loud enough that a guy getting into his truck 2 rows over looked up. I stopped walking. Didn't approach. "No, we don't. You got the letter. We're done." "The letter?" She laughed. "Nothing funny about it. You send lawyers after me? I was there for you when nobody else was. And this is how you repay me?" She stepped toward me. I kept distance. "You need to leave. I'm not having this conversation. You don't get to decide that. You don't get to just replace me and pretend I don't exist. I'm calling security." I pulled out my phone. She stared at me for a long moment. something ugly behind her eyes. Then she turned and walked toward the opposite stairwell, like she'd made her point. I called building security anyway, got the names of 2 witnesses who'd seen everything. Security confirmed the parking deck cameras covered that section and said they'd preserve the footage under my existing case number. Added it all to the file. The burner accounts kept targeting Ruby too. We started noticing tells because the person behind them wasn't as clever as she thought. Same unusual phrases popping up across supposedly different accounts. One slipped up and referenced Ruby's work schedule, something only someone watching her would know. Another was created within minutes of Naomi viewing Ruby's posts through what turned out to be a mutual connections account. How did Ruby figure that part out? Because a friend of hers from college, someone who now lived in Birmingham, reached out asking why this woman named Naomi had been messaging her asking questions about Ruby. The friend thought it was creepy and wanted to give Ruby a heads up. Ruby added all of it to our shared folder with a note that said, "Pattern number 14, same person, getting sloppy." Naomi also showed up at Ruby's gym, a small fitness studio in Madison she'd been going to for years. Told front desk staff she was Ruby's co-worker and asked what times Ruby usually came in to surprise her for her birthday. Staff mentioned it to Ruby next time she came in. Ruby's birthday was 4 months away. They'd never worked together. One evening, Ruby was on the treadmill and looked up to see Naomi sitting on a weight bench across the room, just sitting there, watching her. Ruby said their eyes met for about 2 seconds before Naomi looked away, casual as anything, like she was just resting between sets she never did. Ruby didn't confront her, finished her workout at a normal pace so as not to show fear, documented the time and date on her phone in the bathroom, and left through a different exit. She told the front desk staff what happened on her way out. They offered to write up an incident note, which they did. She checked her mirrors the entire drive to my apartment, told me that night at my apartment. Her voice was calm, but I could tell underneath she was rattled. This wasn't online messages anymore. This was in-person surveillance. When I started apologizing for dragging her into this, she shut it down. "You didn't create her. Stop apologizing for someone else's choices. We deal with it and move forward." That's it. That gym incident went straight into the protective order petition as evidence of stalking. 3 days before the hearing, one final message from another burner number. You could have had someone who actually understood you. Someone who was there from the beginning. Instead, you chose her. Enjoy watching everything fall apart. Saved it. Gave it to Caleb. He nodded because it was exactly what we needed. The protective order hearing was on a Thursday morning in early November. Naomi showed up with her own attorney. She looked different than I remembered from our friendship days. Thinner, tired, like she hadn't been sleeping well. Her lawyer tried to paint me as an obsessive ex making things up. Suggested I was the one pursuing her, that I couldn't handle rejection, that I was weaponizing the legal system to intimidate a woman who'd simply wanted distance. Caleb laid out our timeline, piece by piece, like a man who'd done this before and knew exactly how to build a picture for a judge. He handed over a tabbed binder, color-coded, indexed, with a printed timeline across the first 2 pages and screenshot printouts behind each tab. The judge flipped through it while Caleb walked him through each section. 3 years of text history charted on a simple graph. Naomi reached out 4 times for every one time I did, jumping to 8 to 1 after I started dating Ruby. The fake emergencies that were really availability tests. The cease and desist she answered with threats. Camera footage of someone matching her description at my motorcycle at 2:15 a.m. The handwritten note compared against a card she'd given me years ago. Match was obvious from across the room. The parking deck confrontation backed by 2 witness statements. Burner accounts harassing Ruby, created within minutes of Naomi viewing her posts, one using a phrase identical to something Naomi had texted me months earlier. The fake ethics complaint filed the same week as the cease and desist. Caleb made sure the judge noticed that timing. The gym front desk visit under a fake name. The gym stalking witnessed by members who saw a woman sitting on equipment without ever using it. The judge asked Naomi directly if she'd created the burner accounts messaging my girlfriend. Her attorney advised her not to answer. The judge noted the refusal for the record. He asked if she'd been to the gym in Madison on the date in question. Her attorney objected. Overruled. She admitted she'd been there but claimed coincidence. She'd heard it was a good facility. The judge looked at her for a long moment without saying anything. Protective order granted. Multi-year no-contact order. No contact with me, Ruby, or our families through any means. No coming near our homes or workplaces. No third parties. No fake accounts. But we weren't finished. Caleb filed a civil suit for harassment, property damage, and defamation. The motorcycle repairs alone were over $2,000 between the tire, the repaint, and the seat replacement. The fake ethics complaint had messed with my standing at a company where reputation is everything. 2 weeks of being treated like a suspect at a place where I'd worked for 3 years without a single issue. What she did had real costs, and she needed to pay them. The suit settled out of court 4 months later. She agreed to pay for the motorcycle repairs in full, plus additional damages that covered my legal costs and then some. Payment went through the attorneys on a deadline. No personal contact. Can't share exact numbers due to a confidentiality clause. But it was fair. I never spoke to her again after the hearing. The protective order held. Some mutual friends reached out afterward. Some apologized. Some were just curious. I didn't engage with most of them. The people who mattered had already known the truth. Ruby and I moved in together about 6 months later. Newer complex, good security, working cameras. When I asked her once why she didn't just walk away when things got bad, she looked at me like I'd asked a stupid question and said, "Because you didn't cause this. And I don't leave when things get hard, just because someone else is acting crazy." Scott kept the old apartment and finally got that dog he'd been talking about. My career recovered fully. The ethics investigation went nowhere. HR noted the complaint was made in bad faith, and Marissa made sure the right people got the real story. In aerospace, your reputation follows you everywhere. Mine survived intact. I think about it sometimes. How close I came to being the guy who stuck around indefinitely, waiting for someone who was never going to choose me, but was never going to let me choose anyone else either. Should I have drawn the line sooner? Absolutely. I spent too long being polite when I should have been blunt. That's on me. But her response to losing access wasn't my fault and wasn't my responsibility. Caleb told me most people in my situation wait way too long. They think it'll stop on its own. They think documentation is overkill until they need it and don't have it. I got lucky. A roommate who called it out. A girlfriend who didn't run and had the instinct to build a case before we knew we'd need one. Being someone's backup plan isn't friendship. It's a cage you build for yourself. One sure, I got you at a time. One boundary you let slide. Stay sharp out there, brothers. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.